This month, we've been talking about wisdom. One thing seems very clear: wisdom is not measured by the quantity of information you possess. Wisdom is more about how you sort through that information, how you use it, how you pursue it. As we celebrate graduations and the conclusion of a ministerial internship this Sunday, we remember those moments when we make a step forward in life, maybe even a leap forward. Whether it's exploring space or graduating from high school, testing a new scientific theory, retirement, or Antarctic expeditions. To learn more and to live more fully, each of us makes brave steps from the known into the unknown. Stepping out into the unknown is obviously risky. Some leaps of wisdom are dangerous. Some are emotionally very vulnerable. And some are very expensive. In July of 2012, we made a tremendous leap forward in our wisdom in a scientific discovery. You've probably heard about it. I preached about it a little bit. It was the Higgs-boson particle. This discovery was the culmination of generations of work. Physicists believe for 50 years that something like this existed, but they were never able to actually observe it. Finally, in 2012, these scientists got to see the phenomenon that they believed in. And I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but this Higgs-boson particle is sort of the glue that holds the universe together. I kid you not. Without this field or something like it, all particles would just whiz through space, and all of creation would be basically energy and chaos. It was a huge leap in wisdom that came with a huge price tag. It's estimated that conducting this experiment cost $13.25 billion. $13.25 billion to step into the unknown. I'm so glad that people braver and wiser than myself led the campaign to raise that money. There's a lot of financial risk when we make leaps of wisdom. Those are pretty measurable. Other people have risked their physical safety for the pursuit of wisdom. Not so long ago, sailors traveled into uncharted waters. Explorers walked into lands that were totally unknown. Later, brave women and men leapt into space and dove to the depths of the ocean in pursuit of wisdom. It's jaw-dropping how much courage that must take. They're heroes that are recorded in books and movies. Sometimes the risks that we take for wisdom, though, are less obvious. It's not physical safety or money that we risk in our leaps. It's emotional vulnerability that we most often risk for wisdom. It's true especially in our relationships. To learn about love, we have to risk our own hearts without any guarantee that love will be returned in a recognizable way. It's true for romantic love. It's true for parenting children. Later in life, we take the wild emotional journey of caring for our own parents. Of course, there are bills to pay and errands to run and that concrete sort of stuff. But staying emotionally connected through that journey, exploring the unknown terrain of relationships as it changes, that takes courage. Discovering the particle that holds the world together cost $13.25 billion. Sailing across uncharted oceans risks your life. Taking the leap of wisdom to understand the depths of love risks breaking your heart. It's brave. It's a very high risk with a great potential for payoff. Now, I know this is testing the boundaries of a good metaphor, but I want to suggest that making a leap forward, to make a leap of wisdom, it's helpful to have some solid ground under your feet. Exploration and discovery is all about pushing into the unknown. I think that in preparation for exploring the unknown, it helps to start with what you do know. We Unitarian Universalists tend to be complex and, dare I say, critical thinkers. We deconstruct ideas well. We can always think of a but to tack on to someone's argument. That's helpful sometimes. In other ways, it can hold us back. To move forward in life, to make new discoveries, we have to start from what we know, even if that starting place is a best guess or the most reasonable belief. You have to embrace something. At least that's the way science works. Scientific discovery is cumulative. We forget this. It builds bit by bit as older ideas get debunked or expanded. I think for me, the most fascinating piece of scientific discovery right now is what we're learning about DNA sequencing. We're discovering in minute detail some of what makes each of us the unique, beautiful individual that we are. It's fascinating, and we learn more every year. But if we go back, if we remember where that came from, we might go all the way back to Charles Darwin. His ideas didn't spontaneously emerge either. I learned this week. He couldn't have made his tremendous leap of wisdom without a really strong grasp of biology and geography. Because as Darwin traveled around, he noticed this great diversity of different species, each one uniquely adapted to its particular environment. You and I might have noticed some of that, but he noticed the detail. His knowledge of biology and geography enabled him to study the detail of those organisms, those species. His innovative idea of evolution would have been impossible without a solid grounding in both biology and geography. I think our leaps of wisdom aren't so different. Leaps of wisdom start from somewhere. Yes, questions are great, but it's also helpful to have a sense of the solid ground beneath you. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition doesn't offer all the answers, but we do offer some suggestions, some places where you might start your journey. We offer the idea that every soul is sacred and worthy, that there's a web that connects us to one another and to all of creation. The idea that courageous love makes a difference, and how we live our life now matters more than what might happen later. Those are some suggestions for solid ground. Maybe you have other pieces. Maybe your family or your own personal identity is the solid ground that you start on. Or maybe it's a love for nature and this world. All of us deserve some foundation before we make a leap of wisdom. It's a lot easier to make those harrowing leaps when the direction you're coming from makes sense. It's possible that I've been watching too much news or reading too much Facebook, but there seems to be a pretty heavy amount of despair right now in our world and in our congregation. In the past couple of weeks, multiple people have told me about a serious feeling of hopelessness. With one of those people, I shared a quote from Václav Havel. He said that hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. I want to repeat that. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. There were no guarantees that scientists were going to find that Higgs boson particle, but it made sense to them to invest generation after generation of study and money. They hoped that one day the evidence would emerge. And we too find hope when what we do makes sense. There are few guarantees, but still we venture out, or we get pushed out, into the unknown territories of life. In those leaps of wisdom, I contend that our strongest hope is to settle our hearts and minds on what we know is true and step boldly from there. Amen.